Welcome to our fifth session on housing in Kingston. We've had an open forum. We've talked to homeowners, tenants, landlords, and now we're going to be talking to developers tonight. We have two more meetings. One is going to be on homelessness and housing insecurity. That will be this coming Wednesday, May 1st, at the Clinton Avenue Methodist Church here in Kingston. The last session will be on May 29th. And that will be looking at different kinds of proposals, initiatives, plans that other cities have undertaken in order to address a lot of the same problems that we are going to be facing here in Kingston, as well as the problem we're currently facing. So on that particular night, that's where we'll really have our diving board off into thinking about different kinds of legislation, different kinds of projects, different possibilities for us to take in order to really think about all the housing issues that we've learned about in these hearings, and hopefully to develop some innovative and very effective approaches to housing. We're fortunate in Kingston to have folks who are very dedicated to the issue of affordable housing, have made it, as a matter of fact, the raison d'etre for their organization, and that would be RUPCO, Kevin O'Connor. And so Kevin, if you would come up and tell us about how RUPCO goes about thinking about large development projects. That's what we're really focused on tonight, because we're going to understand this in terms of housing these large buildings, larger developments. One of the things we know is we don't have enough housing in Kingston. We've known that clearly since 2008, and that's been true since the report that the county did that showed that Kingston was behind in terms of housing at middle and affordable income levels. So we clearly need housing at both levels. And anything that we can do to get things done, we have to hear about. So, Kevin, it's up to you.
Thanks, Randy. Thank you for hosting the series of meetings with the Common Council. I've been able to attend all but one, and hope to finish out the last two. So you've asked me to speak tonight as a developer. Happy to do so. Of course, we are a houser. We really participate in all aspects of the housing continuum as a not-for-profit. Headquartered in Kingston, we're working throughout the Hudson Valley. I think in general as a developer, we like to see municipalities get their house in order in terms of comprehensive plans, consolidated plans, their zoning ordinances, their special ordinances, and at any given time, those can be in various stages of completion. But those are sort of the core documents and planning that goes into guiding developers who are coming into this city or any other municipality. It's important for municipalities to really work with their volunteer boards to educate and train people that serve on the planning and the zoning and other boards because development is increasingly sophisticated, environmental concerns and the like, and most municipalities have volunteers serving on the board, so it's important for folks to be continuously educated and trained. Tomorrow, we are hosting at the FDR Library Richard Rothstein, who just wrote the book, The Color of Law, that outlines the history of discrimination in housing. I don't think you can think about development without being reminded of how housing has been, and at the federal government. Certainly FDR didn't start with FDR at the federal level, it didn't end with him, but tomorrow will be there. And municipalities have used zoning, separate public housing, how mortgages are being made, housing development, deed restrictions, community association agreements, and urban renewal have been some of the key tools that municipalities have used to affect discrimination based on race in this country, and that's our history. And it wasn't just the federal government, it involves realtors, assessors, insurance, appraisers, bankers, nonprofits, churches, synagogues, the federal agencies, the regulatory agencies, state and local officials, police and unions. I was reading the book again this week, and I read it last year when we invited Richard to come, but it was an example of one housing development that was making some headway, and was gonna have mixed race and allowed in, and the municipality was fighting it, and so they threatened not to allow the development once it was built to hook up to the town water. And it was only, 5 years ago when a town board member in Woodstock said if our project was approved in Woodstock, they wouldn't allow us to hook up to the water. And so we still have some of these things happening today in terms of how people will use things against. There's a number of housing tools that can be used in terms of trying to affect, most of my remarks are about affordable housing, but to donate land that the cities own, to streamline or shorten the permitting process, to allow accessory dwelling units, to eliminate off-street parking, to waive fees, to allow density bonuses, high-density multifamily zoning, inclusionary zoning with incentives. These are the types of things that are available to cities who are interested and proactive in terms of trying to support development in their municipality. Here in New York, we have the SEQR process, the environmental review process. It certainly is well-intentioned and needed. All of us, I think, are environmentalists and concerned, rightfully so, about the environment. But the SEQR process is something that can be used, I think, either way. It can be used at times, depending on the municipality, to too easily allow something in, or to act to keep something out. And the SEQR process is often redundant. We do traffic studies, and water and sewer studies, and other types of environmental studies over and over. And I think it adds costs to development, and I think there's room for allowing some of this to be done more at a county level, perhaps, certainly often by scientists. I heard a developer once from Europe come to America and said, you guys pretend to do environmental science here. In Europe we do it, and we do it using scientists. Our boards are filled with volunteers, and it's difficult for them to keep up sometimes with the various levels of sophistication. We hire consultants on both sides, and it can add time and money. When Woodstock, for example, issued a pause deck for Woodstock Commons, which was 53 units of affordable housing as proposed, the size of the development that's routinely named deck, the town planning board took 18 months to then determine the scope of work that they wished for us to study. They took 18 months just to decide what they were going to ask us to study. And after 18 months, we got the list, the scope. We spent a little over a year, and the total process took a little over 5 years to get through the environmental review process. So I think there's room for improvement to SEQR, not to negate the important oversight and participation. Oftentimes, some cities have undertaken generic environmental impact statements to take a broader look at things like parking, water and sewer, traffic in this part of uptown Kingston or in this part of this municipality, to more generically look at some issues and make some decisions so that when development comes up, that we can move through it faster. We've already taken a look at some of these issues. Here in Kingston, according to the 2016 American Survey, we have 10,400 housing units, 41% are owned, 48% are rented, and 10% are vacant, according to the American Survey in 2016. An often repeated number is, what percentage of affordable housing units does Kingston have? Well, there are 2,500 affordable subsidized housing units in Ulster County, and Kingston has 996 of them, or 39%. It's often been called out here at various meetings that Kingston has 55% of the affordable housing. It does not, it has 39%. There are 1,148 affordable senior units in those numbers in Ulster County, and Kingston has 236 of them. So Kingston has 21% of the affordable senior units. As I like to remind folks that since Brigham was built in 2001, the last affordable senior housing here in Kingston, Kingston has built an additional 0 senior housing units affordable, while the rest of the towns in Ulster County have built 469 senior units. I think Brennan mentioned the Tri-County Housing Study done by an economist from Vermont, hired by and paid for by the Dyson Foundation, working on behalf of 3 counties, Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster. They did a study of the 3 counties, and they identified for each municipality what the overall demand was prospectively for years 2012, 2015, and 2020. And of that overall demand, what number of units should be built, literally built, to meet the demand. For the city of Kingston, they called that by 2020, 1,005 affordable rental housing built. I think we built certainly in Lakesville 55, and now Energy Square 57, so we're just going over 100 more. And for owner-occupied housing, they called for a demand of 365 units in Kingston to be built by 2020. Of the units that they called for in Ulster County, the rental, Kingston's 1,005, that was 28% of the county's 3,500, and for the home ownership, it was 12% of Ulster County's over 3,000 units. Of course, the rest of the towns have a higher ownership rate than the city of Kingston does. We know that Alice, provided by United Way, the asset limited income constrained employed report shows that Ulster County has a poverty rate of 11% and an additional Alice rate of 30 for an overall rate of 41%. It means 4 out of 10 Ulster County residents are struggling to get by. For Kingston, the poverty rate is 16%, the Alice rate is 43%, overall 59%, so basically 6 out of 10 folks in Kingston are struggling to get by. So we work in affordability, affordable housing, and when we develop affordable housing, people often ask, what is affordable housing? It's really a simple concept of, and it depends on who you're building the affordable housing for, at what generally is a percentage of income. So the general rule, it's true for home ownership and for rental, is that affordable housing costs no more than 30% of your income. In home ownership, this goes to the PITI payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. You should not be paying more than 30% of your gross income for that. And for rental housing, you should not be paying more than 30% for your income and your utilities. And that's true, generally in the, we generally in government programs are looking to fund affordable housing for people in home ownership generally at 80% of area median income and below. And in a rental housing, it's generally at 60% or below, 60, 50, 30%. And the need has always been more striking at the lower levels. So the lower you go, the greater the need. Here in Ulster County, the median income is $79,200 for a family of 4. So that means that half of the people earn more than that, half the households earn more than $79,000, and half the households earn less in Ulster County. You don't have, that's the HUD area median income. There's another set of numbers that produce a median income for the city, and it's significantly less, so about 65% of that would be the cities. So, as an example of a development, Energy Square is under construction now, and it's going to create 57 apartments. And it's a mixed income project, mixed use. So the first floor we have, I think it's over 10,000 square feet of community space. The Center for Creative Education is coming in to rent most of it, and then we have 2 additional spaces, could be 1 or 2, that are to be rented commercially for commercial use. Upstairs we'll have 57 apartments. So this is mixed income. We actually, where the Lace Mill, for example, all of the units are rented to folks at 60% of the median and below, as you know, to start out. Energy Square is going to have 9 units, 15% that can earn up to 90% of the area median income. So for a family of 4, that's 9 units that people earning up to $71,000 can rent. We have 18 units at 60% of the area median. We have 20 units at 50% of the area median. We have 2 units that are renting at 30%. Those are 1 bedrooms and they'll rent for $441, those 2 units. And then we have 7 Isha units for young people age 18 to 25, homeless or at risk of being homeless, and the state is providing a rental subsidy for those 7 units. So we'll have 1 bedroom starting as low as $441, the 50% 1 bedrooms will rent for $736, the 60% 1 bedrooms will rent for $883, and the 90% 1 bedrooms will rent for $1,030. So it's a real mix of income and rental that's coming into the building. The most expensive 4-bedroom, or excuse me, no, 3-bedroom is the 90%. We have 1 at $1,400, and we have a couple at $1,000 for 3 bedrooms as well. So that's what Energy Square looks like from whom we're targeting. And you know, we often come and look at and request pilots for affordable housing for a couple of reasons. So first off, the state, which is using already appropriated funds specific to affordable housing or to historic preservation, and they're making decisions about where they award those monies competitively. They're often looking, to municipalities to make a contribution. The state of New York, using state and/or federal resources, is going to issue a $15 million award or a $20 million award. They are looking for a local contribution coming from the municipality as part of the competition. But more importantly, affordable housing. So for example, at Lace Mill, we have some units that I believe, with the loft and the windows and the space, that we could probably rent for $3,000 a month. When we built Woodstock Commons 5 years ago, we had 10 units, senior units, that were targeted for people at 30%, and we were renting, the starting rent was $320 a month. So when you rent a unit for $3,000 a month, or when you rent a unit for $300 a month, $320, your expenses are generally the same. Your insurance expense, what you pay a maintenance person, the utility cost to Central Hudson, all the operating expenses are generally the same, regardless of what rent you're getting. And so when you are setting the rents at lower levels, to income of lower levels, to create the affordable housing, the one expense that can give sometimes is the tax payment. And RUPCO is one of the largest taxpayers in the city of Kingston. Energy Square, for example, the bowling alley that was there prior to us, was paying about $37,000 a year in taxes to the city of Kingston, combining city and taxes. And we have a pilot for Energy Square that will start the first year, $82,000. But that's often the reason, and the pilots that we generally seek are codified in New York State law through the Housing Development Fund Company, HDFC program. And they're not about creating jobs like other pilots are often given by the IDAs and others that look at job creation. our pilots coming through as part of New York State law for affordable housing are for affordable housing, not for job creation. The other thing, of course, is that here in New York State, Governor Pataki passed a law that governs affordable housing, and it's 581A. And basically, what 581A says is that assessors must assess affordable housing, housing that is regulated by the state, federal government, or local law, with a regulatory agreement, that the local assessor must assess based on the income approach. So you might have spent $5 million or $10 million or $15 million to build Woodstock Commons, and it was a $15 million project. And some will argue, well, we're going to assess it at $15 million. Well, not in New York State. The law, and it's the law of the state, we don't request anything special, says that the assessor must assess that based on the income approach. So if you're renting units at $300 a month versus renting units at $3,000 a month, the income to a project is vastly different. And so oftentimes, the differential between a pilot and 581A is far less than people surmise when they say, well, it's a $30 million project, it's gonna, that's the tax. Well, no, it's not, because 581A, as of right, provides for this, and sometimes we look for even a little bit less of a pilot. But the differential between a pilot and 581A is often much smaller than people sometimes attribute, based on using the cost of a project, but for affordable housing, that's not how it works. Affordable housing creates jobs. According to the New York State Affordable, NYSAFA, the Association of Affordable Housing Developers, a 100-unit housing development in New York State generates 175 construction jobs and 20 permanent jobs. It generates $29.6 million in economic spending during construction and $3.6 million in sustained economic development going forward. So, development of affordable housing is not easy. If it was easy, we would have more of it. There is certainly risk involved. There's risk throughout the process, in acquiring property and seeking local approvals and entitlements for property, and sometimes facing neighborhood opposition. There's risk during construction, in the market and lease up, and in the operation. Increasingly, in New York, housing is asked to do more than just be, housing. And housing is, of course, a very broad continuum, and we are all on it. Housing in our realm is often asked to be affordable. Sometimes we're looking for it to be supportive. It needs to be accessible. It should be energy efficient, and it should be healthy. Sometimes in housing, we're also doing historic preservation, and sometimes we're also doing community revitalization. We're serving, or being asked to serve families, or seniors, or artists, or workforce, or special needs, or homeless. There's rental housing and home ownership, there's condos, cooperatives, and a new model that's increasingly becoming something of interest across the country, a community land trust limited equity model. We need starter homes. We need downsizing homes. Again, I think that's one thing that seems to be missing is for the baby boomers who are aging out. Some want to stay in their homes, but a good number are looking to sell their homes and move into a condo or a place with little to no maintenance requirements. And we haven't had a lot of that built in Ulster County. Housing, we need housing for people of all incomes. And, the cost today, housing is not cheap, and so it's not easy to affect affordable housing without some form of subsidy to lower down the capital cost and/or the operating cost. The general rewards and development are available in earned fees, and, you know, for making money on the development end of it, and trying to come out ahead of the money that you've risked during pre-development. Or sometimes developers look to make their money from the cash flow of the operation aspect. And both are at risk, but that's generally why others are attracted to development. They're looking to make money either on the capital side or the operational side. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Yeah. You brought up about the baby boomer thing.
Yeah.
That seems to be a frequent conversation, you know, nowadays. I'm hearing it more and more. 2 years ago, I probably never heard this concept. I think it's a good idea, and, you know, I'm speaking personally, you know, we're at the stage in our life that, you know, we don't necessarily want to live in a big old Victorian house anymore. How do you see this going? Do you see people interested in developing those type of buildings?
Yeah, you know, in 2006, 7, or 8, there was two 500-unit proposals, one in Burley and one in Silvis, as I recall. 500-unit gated, sort of condo style, that, you know, generally, I think, being talked about being earmarked for, you know, downsizing baby boomers that were both taken out by the market crash in 2008 along the way. One of the innovative housing models that we've looked at, and we've seen it, and what's when we turn 50, we become eligible for the senior, what is that called?
AARP.
AARP, thank you. So, and they feature, so a model where you might have, for example, 12 or so clustered homes, single layer, front porches, single-story home, accessible, some common area to grow food, parking in the back, and a little bit of a, you know, common model, something like that. But in general, I think we will see. I think there's a proposal for some more senior housing in Highland coming up market stuff, and I think we'll see more of it at the market level for sure being proposed.
To piggyback on Alderman Chavez, comment about downsizing, you know, it's a complicated math problem. On one hand, the operational costs of downsizing, lower taxes, lower maintenance, that's attractive. But then you look at the other side, the cost of selling. You gotta clean out your basement and attic and so forth. But on the other hand, you know, if you hold on to the house with the real estate appreciating as it is, maybe you're better off holding it, even though it's the two people living in a 5-bedroom house, and you're burning all this fuel and so forth. So it's a complicated math thing. My own observation, a lot of people, they leave the area. They go to North Carolina, I don't know where they go, but they don't seem to be able to do that here. So there's no crisp answer to this, I know, but it's a very complicated calculation.
Well, you raise, you know, a good point that people want choice, and some might choose to sell and some might not. And so sometimes when housing choice is limited, so we're looking at, for example, in rental housing, and as we know, the state is considering rent control, rent stabilization, and right now, currently, since 1974, there's been 5 counties in New York that have been allowed to opt in, the municipalities in those counties, and that's Westchester, Rockland, Nassau, and then New York City. And generally, when the vacancy rate in that county drops below 5%, then municipalities can opt into rent control law, and it's been around since 1974, and currently being looked at to go statewide. And so when the vacancy rate of rental housing drops below 5%, it's been below 5% in Ulster County since I came here in 2002, people have less choice in their housing market, and so prices can rise and people have less choice. I would argue that right now we don't have a lot of choice in our housing market. There's not a real option in the downsizing market per se here in the county. We haven't seen a lot of housing built, period. And when we look around, when I look around, I'm seeing quite a bit of housing being built right now in the general Poughkeepsie area, in the town. When you go from the Cullen area to the psychiatric center and some of the projects that are going on in the city of Poughkeepsie, I think quite a bit of housing is being built right now on that side of the river. So I think providing choice for people through additional housing is a good thing. It's done well.
So Rutco's looking forward. What's the relationship between push and pull factors in terms of thinking about the large projects that you do? How much is it as a question of an opportunity arises, or do you all have goals that you're trying to meet? Either we're trying to build X amount of affordable housing, or we need X amount of activity in order to continue our operations. What's the balance between those push and pull factors?
Well, I think, about 8 or 9 years ago, the board of directors that we were led by decided that Rutco would go beyond the boundaries of Ulster County and do the things that we did well in other places. We've sort of had about 5 different business lines that we've operated, including managing housing, community development, real estate development, homeownership, rental assistance. Very proud of the fact that the last 2 years we've helped over 100 first-time home buyers achieve their homes. So, given our mission, which is to create homes and support people and improve communities, we have a little bit broader geographic footprint. So we use our mission and vision statement, and then we look for organic need. So Rutco doesn't just do one thing. So we don't just do senior housing and greenfield development, new housing in this model. And we have generally responded to organic need that has been brought to us by a variety of factors. And we think that that's important for us, that there is, particularly as we expand the geography, that there's local energy, local champion, local need, whether it was the Woodstock Town Board appointed Affordable Housing Committee, whether it was the Center for Creative Education that came to us looking for new space at Energy Square, whether it was the fact that Rutco was asked to take a tour of the boarding homes 5 or 6 years ago and saw the conditions of the boarding homes that led us to propose Landmark Place. Those are the types of things. The land bank in the city of Newburgh invited us down about 4 or 5 years ago to get involved down there with some of the abandoned property. So we're looking to make sure that the work that we pursue is well within our mission and vision, and that particularly when we go beyond an expanded geography, that we have, in addition to a real organic need articulated, somebody there that's wanting to work with us to affect that project.
So Kevin, you talked about the assessed value of some of the homes that we're building. Because I've heard with some of the different places with some of the buildings that the owners are putting in, you're saying that it either has to be affordable housing or it has to be suitable to the cost of living, so it can be, or it has to be non-affordable housing. So, but Energy Square and what you do mixed buildings and you're able to do that. Do you think that reason why some developers do not want to do affordable housing or mixed housing is because when the assessor comes in, they assess it not according to how much the project costs, but according to what the median level of income is in the city or municipality.
I think that, a couple things, affordable housing, there are a number of people, mostly private developers in New York State that do affordable housing, and a certain number of nonprofits that do it as well. And it's a certain discipline, there's funding sources and agencies to work with, and so getting into the realm of affordable housing, getting to know the agencies, getting to understand how some of the subsidies work. And then there's market housing, and in upstate New York, the two haven't, really overlapped a great deal. We haven't had a lot of mixed income housing. The city of New York, for example, has had the 80/20 program with bonding and some other subsidy. So almost routinely, they were developing 80% market and 20% affordable through some programs that those didn't really work here upstate. We seek significant subsidy. Again, as I like to say, through appropriated dollars. So the low-income housing tax credit, that has been appropriated by the federal government, given to New York State on a per capita basis to award competitively. Can't go for sewer or sidewalks or other things that people might think are greater needs in affordable housing. We need those subsidies to make the units affordable. We're asked to start out by, who are we trying to serve? And we have served different folks. We've served, seniors at 30%, now I've got some units, going up to 90%, artists and different things that we've done. But when you start with, who are you gonna serve? What's their income? What can you rent? What are the operating expenses? You really should start with your debt. How much can you afford to borrow? And we borrow as much as we can afford to borrow based on that operational scenario, and gap fill. So I think, private developers that have worked in the market that aren't, I think they need some assistance, some support, density bonuses and/or subsidy or other ways, perhaps pilots to get their overall stack down, to make the units affordable. You just can't, the cost today of land, the cost of building doesn't necessarily equate without subsidy to an affordable rental unit. But I think, increasingly, people are interested in, maybe more mixed income projects, like an Energy Square, and certainly interested in perhaps seeing if market projects like the Kingstonian can find a way to create some set aside as well. And I think, it's up to all of us to try and communicate, work together to see if we can make those types of things happen.
Any other questions?
Sorry, Joe, we don't allow public questions, it's just the people in the common council.
Judy?
The rule has been that we're not having questioning from people at large, it's just the members of the common council. You're free to ask, if you want to, after the session is over, that'll be fine, Kevin can stay here. Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, regarding the secret process,